Hey guys, today the topic is erasing items from a vector in C++. So we're going to use the erase vector function, which is quite useful when you want to manipulate the contents of your vector. I've covered vector in a couple of videos that I've posted on this channel before, but today we are looking at the erase function, and I'm on the c++.com page because although they give us some examples here, I think it's important to know what kind of parameters you need to pass that function. And if you look here, you see that we need to pass the erase function an iterator. So there are two ways of calling that function. The first one is you pass it an iterator and you specify the position. For instance, you want to erase a single element from a vector at a certain position, maybe position 2, 3, 4, etc. Or you can also pass it a range. So you give it the first iterator and then the second iterator. So the first one is it's going to start erasing from the first position up to the last one, but the last one is not inclusive. So if you read here again, they say the range includes all the elements between the first and the last, including the element pointed by first, that is the first iterator here. That position is going to get deleted, but not the one pointed by last. So last is exclusive in the range. All right, so what they want us to do in this challenge, before I proceed, let me specify again that I'm going to leave the constraints as an exercise for you guys. This is a HackerRank challenge. I'm not going to stretch this video too much. So the first line of the input is going to contain an integer, and I believe we're going to have to use that integer to size our vector in advance. And then the next line is going to contain the actual integers separated by spaces. And the third line is a single integer. They are calling it x, and it's going to denote the position of an element that we should remove from the vector. And finally, the fourth line is going to contain two integers, a and b, and these are going to denote the range that should be erased from the vector. And it's inclusive of a, exclusive of b. So that's what I've just explained. So the sample input is going to look something like this. First line is the number of integers, and if you check the second line, these are the actual integers that are going to be stored in the vector. So you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements, or 6 integers, because the first line is 6. And then we're going to have to delete, I believe, the elements in position 2, and then we're going to have to delete the elements in the range 2 and 4. So let's get started with the coding. And the first thing is we need to set up our vector. Have this comment right there. Then I'm going to have a string that I'm going to call n, another string that I'm going to call numbers, and another string that I'm going to call numRange. Now the reason why I'm having strings and not directly integers or int variables is because cin is not going to work for this challenge. You have to use getLine. But now I can say getLine. You're going to have a tutorial on getLine, how to use it. The first thing I'm going to do is pass cin and then store the content in n. So this is going to store 6. And it's going to store 6 in the string n. And then I'm going to have getLine again. Cin, but this time around I'm going to store all the integers separated by spaces. I'm going to store that full line in the string called numbers. Next, I'm going to use iString, and I've explained how this works in the past. I'm going to start it up, initialize it with numbers, and then now I'm going to have int num, and finally vector. Here what I'm doing is I'm giving this vector an initial size, and I'm using s2i because what you would do normally, let's say you want an initial size of 10, you could write 10 like this. Here I'm using n to specify the initial size, but n is a string, so I need to convert it to an integer with s2i. And the next step we're going to have to do is store each and every single integer that is on this line, or the integers that are stored in the string numbers. We need to store each and every one of them as a single element in our vector. So for that, we can use a for loop, int I equals 0, and then that's ss iString object, I can use it as a condition in my loop to say if the reading was successful for a num, then I can keep going in my loop. I can store that elements. I can store the contents of num that has just been read into that num variable. I can store that in the vector at position I. So I start at position 0, and I will go all the way, in this case, to index 5, because in the sample input there are 6 elements. So we can go all the way to position 5, at which point this condition here is gonna fail because there is nothing left to read. By the way, I made a mistake. I wrote vector. It's supposed to be v here. All right. This is the name of our vector. V is the name of our vector. So now I can have a string, and again I can use getLine. So now what we are doing is we are going to erase the single elements, this one right here, and what we are doing is we have to read this number 2. Again, like I said, saying it directly is not going to work. That's why I'm using getLine. Now that we've captured the number 2 here, we can simply call the erase function and say erase v.begin, which means it returns an iterator to pointing to the beginning of the vector. And I can say plus s2i. Okay, but I need to add -1. What I want to do is erase the item at position 2, so I'm passing it s2i, which is x -1. Now, secondly, what I want to do is erase a range of numbers. So we're going to apply this thing right there. And that's when we can use our num range variable, which we created at the top right here. Again, it's a string type variable. I'm going to have another iString stream. I'm going to call that ss_range, and I'm going to pass it num range. So whatever we collect here is what we're going to use. In this case, it's going to be 2 and 4. Next, I'm going to have 2 int variables. And now, because we know that we have only 2 items, instead of having a loop, we can simply have ss range. The first one, we're going to store it in range start and then range ends. The 2 is going to go into range start, 4 is going to go into range ends. Now we can say v.erase, we are calling the erase function, v.begin, that is an iterator pointing to the beginning of the vector, plus range start, -1, and then v.begin, plus range ends, -1. And finally, we can also create a variable to store the size of our vector like this. You've seen me do that in some previous videos. So if you check here, the sample output, we are supposed to print out the size of the vector after we have done all our erasing operations. So it's supposed to be 3 at the end based on that sample input. So let's use cout to print the size of the vector. And then now we can simply display the elements or the contents of our vector using a basic for loop like this. And then cout, I can use v@i, and then I'm not supposed to use end line because they're supposed to be space separated. So I can simply have this. All right, so I think we are done with our program here. We set up our vector, we erase a single element like this, then we erase a range of numbers with this command here, and we grab the size of our vector, we display it, and then we use the size again to iterate through the entire vector and display each and every single integer with a space. So let's run this code. We passed the sample test case 0. Let's submit this code, make sure we pass all the test cases, and we just did. So that's it for this video, guys. If you like it, please make sure you subscribe to this channel. Leave your comments or any questions that you have. I will try and get back to you, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.